Oh, this one's actually be a very quick one, but it's something I've been thinking about for a while. And it's the subject of the outer planets, and specifically, I want to talk about Neptune a little bit here, um, because whenever you have certain ideas towards something that ends up being quite divisive, it kind of ends up being a fun, you know, topic of conversation. And the question is whether or not Neptune is a benefic planet or a malefic planet. And, you know, arguments with regards to the benefic side is, you know, um, you might have heard something along the lines of, well, you know, he actually represents the higher octave of Venus. He's unconditional love. He's the highest romances. You know, he's dreamy. He gives you all of the potential of things that might actually be. Um, and that's interesting because it's largely true. Like wherever Neptune is well placed or well aspected, you're going to get you know, potential dreams of things that really ought to be. Like for example, Neptune was going through a transit in Jupiter. I'm sorry, not in Jupiter, in Sagittarius, Jupiter's sign, right? And this is during the 80s, right? And you saw it with this sort of explosion of movies back at that time that was sort of you know, this dreamy aspect of how great things really can be. This is sort of you know, you can think of it in terms of like Guile from Street Fighter 2. You know, it's and his you know, sort of the America F yeah. You know, the concept of the 80s. You know, big, strong, capable. You know. We know exactly where we're going, what we're doing, what the American dream really is, and it does well for all of us, and it's a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun, and Neptune did help bring that out, and it was fantastic for the movies, you know, which is something that Neptune rules, which is, you know, in general anything with illusions, Neptune will have a an impact there, and and you really can get good things out of Neptune. People like to say unconditional love, and wherever Neptune is aspected, you have this, you know, maybe a part of you, or you know, that no matter what happens, you will always have that wonderful part. You know, you always dream of the most wonderful thing about, you know, a potential relationship, or you know, friendship, romantic, otherwise, right? But Neptune usually has a part of it that's very disconnected with reality. You know, those movies in the 80s, everyone knew life doesn't go the way it goes, especially in an 80s movie, which was always heavily romanticized and, you know, never quite, you know, was what it was, you know. It's true about pretty much any movie. It's always sort of like the criticism against Hollywood is that Hollywood has to lie to make things appealing, right? It's never close to reality. It can get somewhat close, but you know, it never really is. And what does that do? It leads people astray. You know what they thought. You know when people went into war back in the Korean War. I think it was the Korean War, yeah, or was it Vietnam? One of the two. Might have been both. They wanted to be John Wayne, right? They wanted to be a hero like John Wayne, like in the, you know, like in the movies, in the and you know, they go out and try to do that, and they come back with a harsh reality that it's not what it's like to be a hero at all, you know. And Neptune has that part of it where whenever you come into reality, you know, you start to realize that putting your hopes and ambitions on a Neptunian dream always leaves you beyond disappointed. But not just disappointed, for many people, it leaves you dead. Because, you know, Neptune is the ruler of the seas. He's the ruler of the oceans. He's and in general, what Neptune will tend to do is, you know, there's a sort of spell casting going on. You know, there's a haze around you. There's confusion that occurs, and if you're not careful, you will get dragged down to the bottom of the ocean. You get dragged down by the sea. You get overcome by the sea, overcome by your dreams. And anytime Neptune is a big player on something, count on it not being real. You can enjoy, what to a certain extent what may be, but you have to constantly you work double or triple time to keep yourself within reality, because that dream will consume you, and that dream will not be fruitful. Not fruitful in the sense of there's got to be something that's grounded in reality. And it's funny because I feel like with people who try to talk about the beneficial qualities of Neptune, do something very similar when they try to talk about the beneficial qualities of Saturn. Saturn is a classically designated malefic planet, and but Saturn in Saturn's presence can be seen as a good thing very often if you work with those energies well, because when Saturn's around, you're going to be working harder. When Saturn's around, you're going to have to really be responsible and diligent and practice diligence, and it's going to be hard work. It's going to be sober, right, with Saturn. But in the process, after he's gone, you find yourself rewarded. You find yourself in a better spot with regards to where you are in whatever house he was going through. And people like to call him like the personal trainer of the zodiac because of it. But make no mistake, every time he comes in, if there is a benefit, it's done through malefic energy. And Neptune does something similar, because Neptune will, does confuse you. Neptune takes you out of reality, and if you don't work well with it, it's not going to do you very well. It's going to be malefic, but it's not as though the presence of Neptune doesn't produce anything of value at all. In fact, we end up going back to a lot of Neptunian, and again, the aforementioned movies. I would imagine video games would be a part of that too, but maybe in the cinematic components of it, we go back to our illusions and our dreams because that's what inspires our reality. Without it, we have a harder time wanting to stay in reality. So it is interesting that we haven't classified it yet. If I obviously with my this is sort of discussionary purposes, my personal belief, although it's not a strong conviction, is that Neptune is a malefic planet. I tend not to think that the outer planets are particularly benefic. So I think there's a natural propensity to people wanting at least one of the three planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, to be benefic. Otherwise it gets kind of dour that, knowing that your outer planets are constantly determining what kind of downward spiral or challenges we're all going to have to deal with. But, unfortunately, as far as my estimation is concerned, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, kind of. But again, I would like to hear your thoughts. If anyone has any, comments about Neptune and what they feel like, Neptune is. And I'm sure there's going to be some great dreamy aspect, for all the positive things. But, like I said, to finish this up, I tend to think, I prefer reality. I think dreams that improve our reality is really what we want to go towards. And Neptune can help that. More often than not, he'd rather have you stay in the dream, and at that point, sink to the bottom of the sea.